Hey everyone, Jim Benson here. I'm here today with Kevin Chase and Jesse Hernandez. I've known both of these guys for a very long time and have worked very closely with Kevin, subjecting him to my sense of humor and other things repeatedly. And yet he has survived. And today, what we're going to talk about is in visual management, in lean, in all of the things that we talk about on humane work. There's this process where we go from thinking that this might be a good idea to actually starting to build it to going through the slings and arrows of outrageous transformation until we get to a place. And often that place is transitory. We get there, we're good for a while, and then we lose it. So just really quickly, I want to share a couple of images, as I want to do. Um, so the first thing we have here is kind of the launch. So on the left side of the screen here, we have what was literally Kevin's first Obeya, first visualization of work that wasn't a spreadsheet. Several years ago in New York. And then next to that is another group of folks who were building out their first value stream ever for a company that builds and distributes forklifts. And in both of these cases, we have what is actually the first epiphanies by people of how they work, where things are going well, where they're not going well, and etc. Then we have things that might be a little bit more beautiful. So this is a very mature system at Dantherm Cooling in South Carolina. It's created by a guy named Kevin Lanford. And here we have actually the full thing from the KPIs and metrics to daily work, standard work, Kanban view, and then over here, real-time continuous improvement in a way that's totally gamified and everybody participated in. So I'm going to stop sharing, and then I will do the thing that you should always do at the beginning after you've had a beginning, is actually let you guys introduce yourselves a little bit. So let's start with Jesse. So Jesse, you want to tell the folks who you are and why you're here today?
Yeah, absolutely. The most important thing people need to know is that I am a selfish servant. I get immense fulfillment from serving people, but I don't just do it because I'm a nice guy. It's because I get a lot out of it. I've had the privilege of working around Mr. Kevin Chase and been able to observe him from the sidelines have massive impact in a massive organization. And also, I got to be super jealous of the fact that Kevin got to work side by side with you, Jim, way back in the day. And so I guess maybe it's just a little bit of proof of how being a selfish servant pays off, because I'm here hanging out with the two of you this morning.
All right. And Kevin.
Hi, I'm Kevin Chase, and I'd like to state for the record, working with Jim is not all it's cracked up to be. No, Jim.
Where's the mute button?
No, Jim has challenged our minds and our thinking here for, gosh, 6 or 7 years, maybe more than that at this point. My role here is business center lean manager for the Northeast here at Turner Construction. It's a relatively new role, and the context is very much coming from a career in operations, engineering, superintending, procurement. So that's afforded me a great window into the work that we do every day, and it's also given us an opportunity to see the challenges that exist within an organization of this size. And job security, I think, is okay because there are many, many problems to solve here. So happy to be here and happy to join you guys.
The first thing I was told when I walked into Turner by Jim Barrett is, I have to warn you, this is a target-rich environment.
Yes,
They said your problem won't be things to do. It will be that there's too many things to do. What Jim Barrett didn't know is that's true for pretty much every company and agency on the planet. So it's very easy to see your own foibles. But the fact was is that working at Turner was pretty much a religious experience for me, just because people actually did care enough to do
Yeah,
things. And that was the importance of that just can't be understated. And so what we want to talk about today is kind of that movement in visual management and being able to communicate what it is that we want to do as a group and then make sure that it gets done. And it's people say it's a journey, but I think it's more probably like being a chickpea in a blender. That you spin and spin and spin, and maybe you might become something delicious in the end, but mostly you're focused on just the centrifugal force. If we started at the beginning, we were talking before the launch here. Jesse was like, I kind of specialize in dealing with the beginnings and the unknown. You've had a lot of podcasts and a lot of interviews with people who are talking about how they're trying to work better and survive as people. If you could kind of put that into a little ball of context, what would you say?
yeah. I think the magical thing, or maybe the most important thing that isn't uh, talked about enough in terms of like this visualizing the work, is the human impact it has. Because when it's in our head, we're forced to face each other and talk or wrestle with a problem, which ends up happening as us interacting as if we are the problem. But when we visualize it, right, this over and over, working with a bunch of people, having bazillions conversations, like, man, y'all are working on the same thing. If you
Hmm.
got it on your head and put it in front of you, you're not facing each other anymore. So now you're not feeling accused or behaving in an accusatory manner. You can look at this problem outside of yourself objectively, or at least more objectively, and work towards a solution. And most of the time, I'm sure y'all know, it's not like we kind of human beings like to interact in terms of you're doing something against me. Most of the time, they're not. They just
Hmm.
don't recognize or are completely unaware on how the action or inaction creates a less than amazing experience for the next person in line. And so that little thing has been like, working at Turner, big, giant, massive, super fancy people, right? Very accomplished folks. And then my background coming up as a plumber and working with trade contractors, it's the same thing everywhere.
Hmm.
The simple fact, like just that one switch in perspective, meaning not looking at each other and putting the thing out on the wall so that we could see it, is almost enough for people to like transform people's lives, especially when they're in a very contentious environment. And
Hmm.
so that's kind of the thing. Like I say, let's just get it out on the board. Where most people say, well, we need some visual management for this. But if I'm new to this, all this stuff, like what the hell does visual management mean?
Hmm.
And so I like to tie the idea or the concept, the tool, framework, whatever we need to call it, to how is it going to make me feel? How is it going to
Hmm.
make the human beings feel? How is it going to change their interaction? And then from there, then start, getting nerdier about it. So I don't know how
Hmm.
far off base I was in terms of the question you asked, but that's what the important thing is for me.
There is no off base. So you could have gone off and talked about muffaletta, and I would have just been all right. Well, sandwich it up, man. So the one of the things that I noticed, because I must have gone through maybe 20, easily 20 different pull planning exercises in Manhattan and well in New York as a whole. And there were two outcomes, and the two outcomes were based entirely on was the Turner. For those of you who don't know, there's a concept called active caring, and if the pull planning exercise, which we'll describe in a little bit, was engaged in with active caring, it worked every single time. And somebody's life was changed every single time. Like I saw very large, very angry New York men cry because of pull planning. Then I saw them handled without active carrying, which was basically like, not that. I was gonna say something very specific, and it might get certain people at Turner mad at me, but it it was insane to me just how powerful the visualization of the work was there. And I'm gonna really quickly, I'm gonna share an image of one of those, and I'm gonna try. Come on, grab it, grab it. There we go. Um, so this particular exercise was done on a just a given day, and a gentleman entered this meeting, and he was angry that he had to be in the meeting. He'd been in poorly run poll planning exercises before, and he was eating a donut. And in a very New York way, he let me know that he was just there for the bleeping donuts. And that he fully expected that the Prime was going to screw him in some way. We got to this part over here, which you can see there's a lot of tickets. So what would happen is you backwardly plan what's going to happen over the next 6 weeks. You get a bunch of contractors together and you figure out where they're going to be in the same space at the same time, or require the same lifts or the same resources, or have, materials that they're shipping, and then you work out those problems. And to make a long story short, we just worked out the problems, and the guy was just beside himself. He was completely beside himself that had happened. And so, Kevin, what you're working on right now is trying to, um, and let me know if I'm putting words in your mouth. You're working on systems to create not just standard work, but standard expectations across projects so that people know what to do and when. And I see that as kind of an outgrowth of what we were trying to do with this visual control here.
Yeah, and if I may, I think it's important to the visual that you just went through. If you don't mind sharing it again,
Oh, sure.
it really is a powerful story of why we are where we are, and we appreciate the point about active caring. An example of that one crew leader who came in who just thought, like in every other meeting that he's probably ever attended in the 15 or 20 years that he has been in construction, you walk into these spaces where there's already a predetermination. I know what your work is. I know how long it's going to take you to do it. I know what sequence it actually needs to go in because I said so. And I just want you here to agree with what my predeterminations are so that I feel good when I have to hold you accountable in the field when it's time to execute the work. In this environment, based on this visual that's here, that predetermination goes out the window. Here, for the first time, you had that crew leader come into a space where someone asked them very intentionally and very authentically, how do we get this done? I need your expertise. I need to understand what are your conditions of satisfaction for you to get your work done. How can I get the rest of the folks who are in this room set up and put into a position to make you as successful as possible? I don't have that answer. I need your input to help us solve that particular problem. So I think that was the feeling, the sense that you got when that crew leader was blown away, because maybe for the first time somebody cared enough to ask him what was important to him, asked him how he was going to actually be successful. And really, when you talk about whatever the word is you want to use, this lean and operational excellence, whatever that term means to you, when we focus on respect for people and developing capabilities, all things are possible. And that really is what our iteration currently is. There's actually been a pretty tremendous shift in the organization where there's a recognition. We say it a lot, Uh, my first day here, I've been with the organization for 22 years. They'll always say that our greatest resource is the people who are doing the work. But the actions maybe didn't necessarily align with that. It was about get to the date, come hell or high water, we're going to get there. Forget about how many bodies are left on the ground. There is personally, I feel that there is a transformation where folks are asking, how do we put our folks in the best position to be successful? How do we connect them to the work so that it's meaningful to them? And how do we give them clarity so that they can show up and be their best selves, so that the work is done, but they feel connected. They understand the why behind it. And they work because they know what their work is and not spending time trying to figure out, does this square peg go into this round hole? I think we're shifting away from that mentality.
One of the things about this particular meeting was when we first ran into this log jam here in the center of the works that was going on. That guy came up and he punched the wall. You can still see where he punched the wall there, and he very loudly just complained, "This is where I get screwed every time." And Paul, who's sitting down here, who is uh, a disarming individual. So both of the people who were running this particular show were both kind of like quietly strong and aggressive. And he just looks at him and says, "All right, well, let's solve the problem." And the guy was like, "What do you mean solve it?" He's like, "Well, let's figure out how to solve it." And that was the moment that you were talking about, Kevin, where it was just authentic. It was like, no, we're here to solve the problem, and I'm not gonna put up with you just complaining about it, and you're not gonna put up with me telling you what to do. So let's solve the damn problem. And so to go back to, for what Jesse was saying, that now, like when you're introduced, we didn't go in and we didn't say like, today we shall give you a class in pool planning. And now we are going to make you experts in lean management and blah 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 blah. What we did is we said we're going to take a bunch of these damn post-it notes. We're going to put them on a wall backwards until we figure out what's going on. We're going to fix that stuff, and then you're going to go home. So the function of the room was apparent long before any philosophy of why the room was there. And after we did things like this, then the supers for the trades were more likely to not ask, but to tell the tradespeople to come into that room and see what was going on. And the next thing we knew on this project, Turner was kitting out an entirely new visual room for the trades actually on the site. And it was only because they created something that was compelling enough for them to come in and look in. And so that's, it starts like that, but I know I've got it somewhere. Here it is. But here's the rest of that room. So that stuff was back here behind on the left side behind the PDCA thing. But you can see that there's visual stuff everywhere in that space, and all of it was there not because they were told this is how you lay out an abaya or this is how you lay out a situation room. That was just the stuff that they needed to see in order to get their work done. Um, and it was still pretty neat. It was still
Yeah.
messy, but pretty neat. So, so, um, so Kevin, as you've moved from that first image to some of the things that you have to show us today, I think, um, there have been a lot of, I won't even call them growing pains. What I would call them is um, that there's just been implementation challenges, I guess would be the best way to put it. That as you go forward and you're helping people see their way to less stressful work, there's a lot of people who resist that maneuver, and a lot of them have good reasons to do that. So, and You've just been living that every day. So, uh, what do you think? Can you say something about that?
Yeah. Um, to that point, yeah, we live it every day, and unfortunately, um, it has required some understanding of like psychology of people and using words in construction that you aren't accustomed to using, like ego and soft skills, where it just used to be just about the work, getting it done. And that, frankly, I think has been our biggest challenge is introducing um, objectivity into the work that we do, because the nature of our work is so fast paced and it is dynamic in nature. And frankly, the persona that you have to be successful here is to have a really large ego, to stand in front of a group of people and tell them, I'm compelling you to do this because I need you to do this for no other reason than I said so.
Hmm.
That requires a tremendous amount of guts and ego. Um, and there are a lot of folks here who have achieved a great amount of success, and the organization has achieved a great amount of success. Highly profitable, long-standing, 100-year plus organization by just willing its individuals to get to some end goal. And I think we're at a point now where we recognize from a sustainability standpoint, if we continue to act emotionally and not as informed as we ought to be based on what our environment is telling us, we are not going to sustain the construction industry is telling us. So how do we
Hmm.
begin to use our environment to create the visualizations, to introduce the objectivity where we have less emotional conversations and we actually leverage the intelligence of the individuals, the really good individuals that we have working here to go ahead and go solve problems. To the example that you talked through in that pool planning scenario, it worked because the work was in front of you. It was objective.
Hmm.
I need to do this, then I need to do this. And it forced meaningful and tangible conversation, which allowed us and freed up the space to go ahead and go just do the work.
And what's interesting about that is that it did put it in an objective space with an understanding of the emotions and non-objective things behind that. So it was actively defraying any of the cognitive biases that could have made people jump to anger or to quick decisions. And it was just basically like, no, we are going to keep engaging your thoughtfulness, your system two thinking, your rational mind. We're going to keep bringing you back to that by showing you this image. But it's not saying I'm denying your emotions. It's saying I understand that they exist and that they can help us if you get happy or they can hurt us if you keep being a jerk, and or if you feel like I'm being a jerk to you, or what have you. So
Yeah.
Jesse,
Empathy,
that oh, go for it.
I think empathy and humility is a superpower
Yeah.
in our work. Right. And I would love Jesse, because I know Jesse thinks this way. I would love Jesse to talk about that as well.
Yeah.
Yeah, the humility thing, I've got oceans of humility, and it's just because I'm so good looking. But a couple of things when people reach out to me and say, "Hey, we want to do this last planner thing, we want to do lean stuff," particularly general contractors, I'm like, okay, but it is going to require a gigantic shift in your behavior. Like, well, what do you mean? I heard it helps hold trades accountable. Like,
Yeah.
yeah, that's what people think, and that's what makes it hard. Well, what do you mean? Do we need a shift in behavior? I said, and you said it at the very beginning, Jim, when you opened the conversation about pool planning, the active caring, and so I just use words that are a little less soft, right? Because not everybody is as squishy and lovable as we are, but it's really you got the shift in behavior is going from directive to collaborative, which easier words are less mouth noise, more listening. Mouth noise means question, not statement.
Hmm.
And that behavior is extremely difficult,
Hmm.
especially when I've spent my whole career screaming and yelling and been promoted and gotten raises and gotten recognition. Now, all of a sudden, I got to listen and ask questions like, what the hell are you talking about? And so that's like and I've seen this all over the place, Kevin. I'm sure you've seen it all over the place. It is the key. Like if whoever it is within the team, the lead of those poll plan sessions, if they cannot shift towards building and supporting a collaborative environment, they might as well do what they've always done. They're just wasting stickies, wasting money on donuts, and pissing people off. That's I don't know. Hopefully that's motivating. I don't know.
So one of the things that that Turner naturally put up in every Obeya that we built while I was there, um, even ones that didn't involve me, was at the top of every room there was a timeline showing milestones, and that timeline view was like the most awesome visual control to defray that behavior in people at Turner who were very used to yelling. Because now when a customer said, I want to change this granite staircase to a spiral staircase made out of Fruit Loops, that they could point at a milestone and they could say, this milestone, I would love to do that for you. This milestone is going to move out, and then all of the other ones are going to move out too. And it's just that little pointing, because they can't say no, it won't, because it's obvious that it will. But if you don't have a visual control and you just say it's going to take longer, then that's just bitching. But
Yes.
even just pointing at something as simple as just that milestone chart. Um, I watched that multiple times, and I watched it with people that Kevin and I knew well who were the yellers or the dictators of the project, who still were managed to get their approach softened a little bit by at least that particular visualization. And one of the things that I love about this work is that when you do make that game space, people's behavior changes according to the rules of the game of that game space. And that's hard for, I think, a lot of lean people to hear, because lean people are like, this is all scientific management and I'm just doing the thing I'm supposed to do. And it's like, no, you're manipulating people, dude. It's for the purposes of good, but if you don't own that you have an outcome that they don't want and you've put something up there to get to that better outcome, that is literally looking at their behavior profile and understanding where they're going to screw themselves in the project over, and you want to put up a beneficial constraint that will help them behave in a better way for everybody's benefit, including themselves.
Yes. Yes. So can I show some pictures of my expert manipulation?
Absolutely.
Why you do that? That's the first time I've intuited the manipulation, and I've just resolved myself that that's who I am. I've never heard anyone else admit to that, so I appreciate you in this moment.
Here's how I reconcile the whole manipulation influence idea. If I'm the only one that is going to get benefit from it, then it is manipulation. And I'm an expert at that. I spent all of my 20s, half of my 30s manipulating the hell out of everybody. But if there is a shared reward through the experience, then it is influence. It's the same tactics, but the outcome or maybe the goal and intent are different. And so a little bit of background. This group had they want to do last planner system, general contractor, multifamily builders. And we want to do last planner on all our projects because we want to improve our relationship with the subcontractor market. And I said, okay, that's a great purpose.
Good
Let's get together. And then they said, okay, we want to train everybody on last planner. I said, oh, I don't recommend that. They said, no, we want to do it. I said, okay, here's what's going to happen. So they did. And what happened, what I said was going to happen, happened. There was everybody walked away from each of the training sessions with their own understanding of the thing. And so they all went and deployed and applied their version of whatever they retained from a 1-day training session. And so, and of course, what happens? Trades are saying, man, I was just on Kevin's job. He don't do it like this. I was just on Jim's job. He don't do it like this, which I knew that was coming, but they wanted to do it. And actually, they're like, we want our people to experiment with it first. And I said, okay, cool. And then they said, okay, now we need to do something. So I agree. And the first thought they came to the table was, we need to distribute templates of what the daily huddle board needs to look like and the constraint board needs to look like, la, la, la. And I said, negative. You can do that and you can have the same problem. Or they're probably going to stay on the side of the trailer and never get mounted. So you guys, the decision makers here, need to understand what you're asking for and the support it's going to take to actually deploy the damn thing in such a way that it brings the value to the people using it. And they said, what does that mean? And I said, that means we need to have a cuss and discuss session. And that was the name of the meeting. It was like a half day, maybe 6-hour workshop. All the decision makers, maybe I like to call them influencers, the folks in the department that had the largest amount of responsibility and influence within the organization. So not necessarily the department head, because sometimes people don't like the department head. And if they're the ones leading the change, guess what? The change is going to suck. So the one that had the better relationships. The idea was you want to do this last planner system that is composed of a lot of behavioral change, and there's a bunch of different elements of the work that are designed, or of the system that are designed to handle or mitigate the impact of particular problems at different phases of the work. So let's understand where your biggest pain point is so that we can deliver value to the human beings that are going to be the face of the change. So we went to, let's prioritize first. There's 5 things. And I know all my lean construction people are going to say, that's not the standard. Like, okay, you're right. But it works. And so of all the elements, what are we going to do first? And they say, you know what? Our biggest problem is constraint management. Okay, good. Then let's focus on constraint management, all right? The second one was daily huddles. And then the third was weekly work plan, which surprised me because I expect them to say, what's the pull plan? Because everybody loves the pull plan. And as a subcontractor, I don't care about the pull plan if you don't know how to remove constraints. That doesn't help me. All it does is reinforce the fact that you're not going to remove the constraints and you're going to beat me up about PPC because you didn't remove the constraint. And so back to the timeline, Jim, and this is, we had some arguments and debates about what needs to be prioritized, but the value in that was that the team, these decision makers for the company, got on at least in the same book about what needed to be focused on first and why. And this cycle up here, it says constraint management, daily huddle, weekly work plan. I erased that about 20 times because they're like, oh, this needs to be first. This needs, oh. And then finally they're like, you know what? That makes sense. And then I said, okay, cool. How long are we going to focus on deploying, supporting, training, coaching the constraint management piece before we introduce daily huddles? That's not to say they can't do the rest of it. It is to say that we're going to focus on this element first and get good at it before we shift our focus to the next element. And they're like, well, it should take about a month and a couple of weeks. And so I started putting the numbers on it, right? 60 days, 180 days. And then they're like, wait a minute. As soon as I wrote down the days, they started looking at their calendars. And they're like, oh, if we're going to do that in 60 days, or they started with like 15 days and 30. It's like, man, we got this meeting, we got this thing. So we can't support it the way we need to support it. And it was just a simple function of me writing the damn number down on the wall. And so point being, that conversation rarely happens. It's like, we want to deploy last planner system. We're going to tell everybody when to do it and how, to do it. We're going to put them to training. But getting it out of them and putting it on the wall so that we could say, look, this is the thing that we're prioritizing. This is your contribution to the deployment of the thing. You're going to have conversations. You're going to have coaching sessions with them. You're going to have some measure of checking in and following up and making sure it happens. You got X amount of projects. And you have a job. Also, this is new, not just to them, but it's new to you. All of a sudden, help them come out with a more responsible, more actionable plan in terms of the deployment of the thing, which had we not written it on the wall, they would have all agreed, like, yes, we need to support it. Yes, we should give it more time. And then they would have done we would have done what we've always done by getting it out there, helped us get really, really clear about if this is our intended outcome, we really need to think about the duration in terms of the impact and the commitment to support the thing. And so again, all that to say, having the conversation is good and important, but putting it on the damn wall, it just changes the way we look at things all of a sudden. And like mine is just super messy, scribble, scrabble stuff, but it helped them get super clear and then introduce it to the teams and say, hey, teams, this is what we're doing. The number one complaint that the folks that weren't in the room, because I got to manipulate or influence, interact with all of them through book studies and other things, was, this is an amazing company. They do a lot of training. The problem is there's a lot of change. And I'm like, well, I know that argument. I'm like, okay, but is it the change that really bugs you? Like has any of it been bad? They're like, no. The problem is we don't know why and how long we need to be focusing on what changed. It's like, And so we built that or baked that into this approach to help these influencers and decision makers understand, like, bro, I know you're innovating and I know you want to improve the business and all the things, which they're doing phenomenal things.
Yep.
But we're missing, your people don't understand why and how long. And so it could be eternal or it could be just a blip, but they're approaching it with the same intensity. So let's help them understand what the path looks like going forward.
And that's super important for construction, because construction is entirely driven by how long is it going to take me to build this thing. And then you come in with change management. You're like, oh, we're going to kind of do some stuff kind of over time. And then they're like, well, let me show you, let me pay you a lot of money, waste a lot of time, and then show you the door.
Yes.
And that was, for me, like personally, you learn things everywhere you go. That was one of the things that I took away the most from Turner, was that you can't just go in with a happy, lean, or agile transformation that just kind of randomly happen over time. You actually do need to come in with some sort of initial conceptual design, and then you have to build that out with some sort of a project plan. And when I did that, that made other things that I have done since then much more successful. Because even though they're not that drawn, they don't walk around with, their P6 login, in their back pocket. But people do want some degree of certainty that something is about to happen, and loose, maybe we'll do something, transformation plans just don't do it for anybody, because you don't have anything to hang on to. So
Yeah.
we are about to run out of time. Actually, we already did run out of time. But I did want to come back to so Kevin, you've done a lot of things that have taken those first diagrams that we came up with, or first visual controls, and you're actually turning them into something that can be deployed globally in a multinational corporation. Did you still want to share and talk about some of those things?
Yeah. This is, I don't know if it's convenience, coincidence, or divine that Jesse went down the pathway that he did as far as talking about some of the problems he's solving. Like constraint management continues to be a bugaboo here for us, and using last planner system as kind of our foundation and how we execute our work. Um, One of the things that was interesting in listening is, as leaders in continuous improvement, is to the point that you're raising, it's great to have a plan and to kind of communicate that visually to the teams that you're trying to affect. Um, but what we don't often do is recognize that the group that we're trying to affect is actually listening and improving, and they're achieving some level of maturation. And you have to be in a position to say, when they ask you, well, what's next? What do I do now? You have to be in a position to actually communicate, okay, here's what the next iteration is. I didn't show this to you up front because it would have been a mind F. But I think we're at a position now where we can be a little bit more intentional and maybe do some refinement around some of the visualizations. And that's where I think we are as an organization. The questions from, well, what is Last Planner? Or what is this production system? To how do I use it? To how does this help me do my work better? Like that's the cycle that we're on now. So we'd love to be able to share with you where we are in helping to support our teams in communicating how's it going to make your work better. If you can just give me a thumbs up that you can see this screen here. Perfect. So basically, our teams are asking us, hey, we know what a production system is, but what is frustrating is that from job to job, I don't actually know what I need to do when, to the point of that time scale that you were referring to. So what this is just a quick sketch of like minimum expectations. Here are what we believe are the core collaboration points during any given week that we expect all of our workers and our trade partners to be engaging with, to say, this is what our work is, this is how we check to make sure that we're doing the work that we have planned for the day and we're prepared for the work tomorrow. And here are some other opportunities to surface. I'm impacted, something's in my way. Let's use this framework of meetings to surface those things. So high level visual, this is kind of that core expectation. Then we transition to, can you get there? Then we transition to saying, okay, you know what your meetings are, but how do they connect to one another and how do they talk to one another so that you know, and there's a recognition that you have some work that you do some of the times in some non-cadence way. There's some work that there's an expectation that needs to be done weekly in a very regimented, intentional way. And here's the things that we want to come out of that. We want you to be able to identify what those challenges are and constraints, which is marked by a red dot. And then in some instances, we want you to have conversations and how are you coming up with mitigation? How are we solving those things? And here is a frequency of the meetings. And here is how one group of meetings connects to another group of meetings and then escalate to another group of meetings. So that our entire system is about problem identification and problem solving. And we're having less conversation. We want you to have less conversation about like, what am I supposed to be doing today? And at the end of it, which is really where the value behind this thinking is, it's great now. You actually like, how's this going to help me do my work better? We've given you clarity and the expectation on your day-to-day work. But now we're saying to you, every day, we want you to talk about what problems did you have today? Are there problems that you can navigate on your own? Can you support with maybe a next layer leader to help you solve that problem? Or for the really big problems every day, we want to be able to surface them with our senior most operations person who can help you distill the information and help clear the field for you, saying, hey, I think you can solve these 8 problems. These other 2 problems are mine, and I'm going to help support that. So that gave clarity to the workers, our teams, and what their collective work was. And then the last piece is clarity on like each of those individual components using a transformation framework from lean and continuous improvement. Everything that you do falls within these criteria. We're gonna lessen the brain power in you trying to understand what your work is. We're gonna give clarity in the purpose of that collaboration, how it's done through defined process. And then really importantly, we talk about the human element of this. You're doing these for these specific reasons to help build your own capabilities. If we can communicate to you very clearly, the expectation for you to do this work are these very explicit things, we can do 2 things. We can hold ourselves accountable to ensuring that you have these capabilities. And in part 2, if you don't have them, there's not a chastising moment. It's an opportunity to say, hey, there's some gaps that we can see objectively that we can work together to help you close so that you feel meaningful and purposeful to do your work. And then lastly, maybe most importantly, how your work connects to the overall management system. I know I'm sitting in this trade engineering meeting and I'm talking about my specific items, but I know that I have a responsibility to communicate that to a larger team where we might be able to discuss how my constraints impact somebody else that I don't have transparency to. And then most importantly, they're communicated at an owner meeting where a lot of the problems that need to be solved requires their influence as our key and primary stakeholder. So the maturation of identifying what problem are we ultimately trying to solve, which is development of capability in individuals and getting clarity around systems and constraint identification to a point where we can now visualize our work cadence and milestones. This is how often they should be occurring. And this is how you do that work is freeing up our staff from the variability in work identification and allowing them to do what they came to work for us for, is to use their brains to actually go ahead and go solve problems and free up their capacity, just to go ahead and go engage in their environment in a meaningful way and do less firefighting. So this is a very ideal state where we're in the process of understanding how to roll this out in a very intentional way. We're going slow to go fast, but we do believe that this is something that can help us sustain as an organization.
That is awesome. What I appreciate about this is that, when people do have a comfort level with what they should be doing, then they can also build a comfort level with what they can do. And so, like you were saying, if I understand that I've got these constraints and they're bumping up against your constraints, or they're impacting you, or you're impacting me, it's no longer a territory you and me. It's now a collaborative you and me, where it's like these constraints now make us a team and we need to solve this together. And by the way, those two superintendents who have nothing to do with these two constraints were in our shoes on a project 2 years ago. They should come in and help solve this with us, and we should get like 5 or 6 people together and just knock this thing out. And it's breaking down the first trailers that I walked into had like 20 people sitting in them, and they were all like this little individual silo. It was like they were all sitting there in little Jetson, cute, bubbles, and like they couldn't talk to each other. And I watched that change, to the point where it didn't, even on projects that I wasn't involved with, I would go in for a visit or just to talk to them about Kanban or something. And that seemed to fade pretty quickly. And I think it was because that was like the behavior no one ever wanted to do, but just felt like they had to. Um, I remember there was a couple projects that I worked on with you, Kevin, where there was a point where there was a problem in the project. And then at that point, the leadership of the project was like, stop talking to each other and get your work done. And then there was like a mini revolt.
Yeah, yeah,
We're like, no, we're not going
yeah,
back.
yeah. Commonality is so disarming. Like the point that you were raising when you walked into the obey room and folks had their emotions and they looked up at the milestone chart and they talked about if you move things, how they affect each other. The fact that there was a realization that, hey, these milestones are all of our milestones, that they're all important to us.
Hmm.
Maybe we are better served kind of talking together to figure out these problems, right? It's just human behavior. If I don't know Jesse and we happen to meet in the airport and we start talking about our favorite football teams or our favorite ballets that we like to go to, that commonality, the opportunities disarms us and allows us to get to reasons and why we need to be more connected so that we can go
Hmm.
solve a problem that we didn't realize we were sharing.
Awesome. So just like with every lean coffee, it's like every one of these conversations ends abruptly and without a real ending because we've just run out of time. This went exactly as I wanted it to go. I knew that you guys would not disappoint, coming with both stories and images and everything. So thank you for this. I'm pretty quick at getting these up, so I'm going to go do another presentation in a few minutes, but then probably tomorrow morning this will actually go up with a little thing. Yeah,
Bam.
I'm motivated.
Awesome. Awesome.
And because one of the things I did notice is that if you ever procrastinate on these, you'll put them out like a quarter later.
Yes,
So you either do it or you don't. It was wonderful seeing both of you again, and we should do this again sometime soon.
for sure.
Yeah,
Take care.
yeah. All right. And